Shadow people. We begin our descent with perhaps the most universally reported hallucination, shadow people. These dark humanoid figures appear across an astonishing range of conditions: sleep paralysis, stimulant psychosis, extreme fatigue, and delirium. What makes shadow people so fascinating is their consistency. They're always described as dark silhouettes, usually human-shaped, that lurk in peripheral vision. They dart and move when you're not looking directly at them, but freeze or vanish when observed head-on. I've been awake for 3 days straight, and I keep seeing them in my peripheral vision. Dark figures that shouldn't be there. When I turn to look, they're gone, but I know they were watching me. The question that haunts researchers: why do brains under stress consistently generate this specific type of entity? Is there something hardwired in human consciousness that creates these watchers in the shadows? The roommate. Moving deeper, we encounter the roommate, a phenomenon primarily associated with diphenhydramine, commonly known as DPH or Benadryl in high doses. Users report having full, detailed conversations with people they believe are in the room with them, only to realize hours later that they've been completely alone. The conversations feel completely real. The roommate has opinions, tells stories, even argues. Users describe the crushing loneliness and confusion when they realize their companion was never there. It's not just seeing something that isn't there. It's believing in a complete social interaction that existed only in their mind. The man in the doorway, perhaps one of the most unsettling common hallucinations, is the man in the doorway. This figure appears during sleep paralysis episodes and deliriant experiences, always in the same position, standing in or near a doorway, perfectly still, just watching. What makes this entity particularly disturbing is its passivity. It doesn't approach, doesn't speak, doesn't threaten. It simply stands and observes, with a presence that users describe as overwhelmingly malevolent, despite its inaction. Neurologically, doorways represent transition spaces, boundaries between the known and unknown. It's no coincidence that our stressed minds place threatening entities in these liminal spaces. Talking walls. The phenomenon of talking walls reveals how profoundly altered states can transform our environment. Users report walls that whisper, argue, or carry on conversations just beyond the edge of understanding. The voices are usually unintelligible but feel meaningful, creating a sense that important information is being discussed just out of reach. This auditory hallucination often occurs in dark, quiet environments, where the brain begins to fill in sensory gaps with phantom sounds. The walls become alive with voices that were never there. Nox helicopter. Our final surface-level entity brings us to the auditory realm, the Nox helicopter. During intense nitrous oxide experiences, users consistently report hearing the sound of helicopter rotors or spinning blades. Some describe feeling lifted or even abducted by this phantom aircraft. Nitrous oxide affects the brain's processing of spatial orientation and auditory input. The helicopter sound may represent the brain's attempt to explain the spinning, lifted sensation that nitrous creates. The Hat Man. We now enter the realm of entities that have transcended individual experience to become a cultural phenomenon. None is more infamous than the Hat Man, a tall, faceless figure wearing a distinctive, wide-brimmed hat or fedora. The Hat Man appears across multiple conditions: sleep paralysis, DPH experiences, benzodiazepine withdrawal, and stimulant psychosis. What makes him particularly terrifying is the intense dread he evokes. Unlike passive shadow people, the Hat Man carries an aura of malevolent intelligence. The consistency is staggering. Before the internet allowed people to compare notes, individuals separated by continents and decades described identical encounters. A tall figure in a hat, standing motionless, radiating evil intent. The Hat Man has spawned countless online discussions, artwork, and theories. Some suggest he represents archetypal fears of authority figures. Others propose he's a manifestation of guilt or paranoia. The most unsettling possibility? That he represents something real operating beyond our normal perceptual range. Machine elves. From the realm of terror, we shift to perhaps the most celebrated entities in psychedelic lore, the machine elves. First popularized by ethnobotanist Terence McKenna, these colorful geometric beings are primarily encountered during DMT breakthroughs. They're like jeweled, self-transforming basketballs, and they're speaking in a colored language that you can see. Machine elves are described as playful, mischievous, sometimes helpful entities that seem to exist in a space of pure information. What's remarkable is how consistent these descriptions are across different users, cultures, and time periods. Are machine elves projections of the mind's attempt to personify the geometric patterns DMT creates in visual processing centers, or something more mysterious? The opium bird. Moving into the realm of opioid experiences, we encounter the opium bird, a dreamlike avian entity that appears during deep nods and opium dreams. Unlike the geometric chaos of machine elves, the opium bird represents serenity and mystery. Users describe a beautiful, often exotic bird that watches from a distance, sometimes speaking in riddles or symbolic language. The bird embodies the peaceful, disconnected state that opioids create, a messenger from a realm of eternal calm. Cigarette Guy. One of the most oddly specific DPH hallucinations is the cigarette guy, a recurring figure who appears to offer users a cigarette. What makes this entity particularly strange is how users often accept and smoke the phantom cigarette without realizing it's not real. He seemed so normal, just a guy asking if I wanted a smoke. I said sure, took the cigarette, and spent 10 minutes smoking nothing while having a conversation with someone who wasn't there. The cigarette guy represents the mind's ability to create complete, interactive scenarios that feel entirely real in the moment, but reveal their impossibility only in retrospect. Ceiling crawlers. The horror continues with ceiling crawlers, figures or creatures that scuttle across ceilings during deliriant experiences. These entities appear as spiders, children, or indescribable horrors that move with impossible fluidity across surfaces. The ceiling represents safety in human psychology. We rarely look up for threats. When entities appear there, they violate our basic sense of spatial security, creating profound unease. Mannequin people. Among the most unsettling DPH entities are the mannequin people, emotionless, static humanoids that resemble store displays. They stand motionless, neither threatening nor benign, existing in an uncomfortable space between human and object. The uncanny valley effect makes these entities particularly disturbing. They're human enough to trigger social recognition, but artificial enough to feel fundamentally wrong. The librarian. Our final Tier 2 entity brings us to the librarian, a stern or neutral figure encountered in dissociative states, particularly with ketamine and DXM. This entity inhabits a vast, impossible library and sometimes offers books with strange or unreadable content. The librarian represents the mind's attempt to organize and catalog the overwhelming information processing that occurs during dissociative experiences. Knowledge exists here, but it's alien and incomprehensible. Jesters. As we descend into Tier 3, we encounter entities that test and challenge users rather than simply observe or interact. The jesters, also known as fractal clowns, appear primarily during DMT, LSD, and psilocybin experiences. These trickster figures laugh, mock, and challenge users' perceptions. They're not malevolent like the Hat Man, but they're not benevolent either. They exist to confuse, to test, to reveal the absurdity of taking any experience too seriously. They were laughing at me, not cruelly, but like they knew something I didn't. Every time I thought I understood what was happening, they'd show me something that proved I was wrong. Jesters represent the psyche's ability to maintain perspective during overwhelming experiences. They prevent users from becoming too attached to any particular revelation or insight. Doppelgangers. The phenomenon of doppelgangers during DPH experiences represents a complete breakdown of self-recognition. Users report seeing perfect copies of themselves or people they know, often engaging in normal activities. These false selves are convincing enough to fool users completely. They represent the mind's ability to create perfect simulations of familiar people, raising disturbing questions about the nature of identity and recognition. Hellhounds. Moving into more threatening territory, we encounter hellhounds, beastly shadow-like dogs associated with methamphetamine use and DPH experiences. These entities carry an overwhelming sense of death and pursuit. Unlike human entities that might be reasoned with or understood, hellhounds represent pure animalistic threat. They embody the paranoia and fear that stimulants can create, manifesting as relentless hunters in the shadows. The soft lady. In stark contrast to the threatening entities, the soft lady appears during opioid experiences as a comforting maternal presence. She may stroke users' hair or speak in soothing tones during the nod. The soft lady represents the ultimate comfort that opioids promise, a return to childhood safety, maternal protection, and unconditional love. She embodies the seductive, nurturing aspect of opioid addiction. The laughing light. Cannabis and LSD users report encounters with the laughing light, a glowing orb or presence that seems amused by the user's experience. This entity shifts between seeming benevolent and judgmental. The laughing light represents the mind's relationship with its own altered state, sometimes feeling enlightened, sometimes feeling foolish for taking the experience so seriously. The TV people. Our final Tier 3 entities are the TV people, glitchy humanoids that behave like characters trapped in a television show. They loop movements, have repetitive conversations, and seem fundamentally artificial. The TV people represent the modern mind's interpretation of artificial consciousness. In an age of screens and digital media, our hallucinations incorporate the aesthetics of technology, creating beings that feel programmed rather than alive. These entities reflect our deep anxiety about authentic human connection in a digital age. They're people, but not really people. Social interactions that feel hollow and scripted. Clockwork beings. Tier 4 brings us to entities that seem to exist beyond human psychology, operating according to alien logic. Clockwork beings appear during DMT, LSD, and ketamine experiences as mechanical, insectoid creatures that seem to construct or maintain reality itself. These entities don't interact with users in recognizable ways. Instead, they appear busy with incomprehensible tasks, adjusting reality's mechanisms, maintaining cosmic machinery, or building impossible structures. Clockwork beings suggest that consciousness might glimpse the underlying mechanics of reality. The idea that what we perceive as natural might actually be constructed and maintained by intelligent processes operating beyond human understanding. Cheshire Grin. The Cheshire Grin appears as a disembodied smile or a being with an unnaturally stretched, frozen grin. Unlike the playful jesters, this entity's smile feels wrong. Too wide, too persistent, too knowing. The Cheshire Grin represents the unsettling nature of expressions disconnected from genuine emotion. It's happiness without joy, amusement without humor. A mask of emotion that reveals its artificial nature through its very perfection. The light being. At the other end of the spectrum, the light being represents pure positivity and love. Encountered during DMT and psilocybin experiences, this entity appears as brilliant, divine light and is often interpreted as God or a cosmic messenger. The light being offers unconditional love and acceptance, often providing insights about the nature of existence and the user's place in the universe. These encounters frequently result in lasting positive changes in users' lives. Yet, the consistency of these divine encounters raises profound questions. Are users glimpsing genuine spiritual reality, or does the human brain contain built-in circuits for generating godlike entities during transcendent states? The Spiral Man. The Spiral Man appears during opioid experiences as a figure composed of swirling lines or spirals. He descends or floats near users as they fall into the nod, representing the descent into altered consciousness. Spirals are fundamental to human visual processing and appear in hallucinations across cultures and substances. The Spiral Man embodies this basic geometric form, becoming a personification of the mind's tendency to see patterns and meaning in abstract forms. The Grid Keepers. Ketamine and DXM users report encounters with Grid Keepers, entities that seem to run or oversee the space within dissociative experiences. These beings may block paths, explain trip mechanics, or act as guides through the dissociative realm. Grid Keepers suggest that the mind creates internal models of authority and structure, even in completely altered states. They represent the psyche's attempt to maintain some sense of order and explanation during profound dissociation. The Clacker. Our final Tier 4 entity is the Clacker, a clicking or clacking auditory hallucination that may become embodied during stimulant psychosis. Users often describe feeling stalked or mocked by this persistent sound. The Clacker represents how auditory hallucinations can develop their own personality and presence. What begins as phantom sounds evolves into a felt presence with apparent intelligence and intent. Forest spirits. These entities often feel older than human civilization, representing humanity's deep connection to the natural world. They may offer teachings about ecological wisdom or show the interconnectedness of all living things. Forest spirits suggest that psychedelic experiences can access something Jung called the collective unconscious, shared human memories and archetypes that transcend individual experience. The tall man. The tall man, related to but distinct from the Hat Man, appears as an impossibly tall, slender figure during DPH experiences and sleep paralysis. His height violates normal human proportions, creating immediate unease. The tall man may represent fears about authority figures or threatening strangers, exaggerated to impossible proportions. His abnormal height makes him fundamentally inhuman, while maintaining recognizable human form. DPH spiders. The classic DPH experience includes phantom spiders crawling on or under the skin. This formication, the sensation of insects crawling on the body, feels completely real to users. DPH spiders represent the mind's interpretation of altered nerve signals. The brain receives unusual sensory input and interprets it as the most primitive threat, crawling insects that must be found and removed. The chrysanthemum entity. DMT users often encounter the chrysanthemum entity, an elaborate floral fractal structure that appears to guard the threshold to deeper DMT space. This entity is overwhelming in its color and complexity. The chrysanthemum represents the brain's visual processing centers being pushed to their absolute limits. It's not just a pattern, but a felt presence that seems to evaluate the user's readiness for deeper exploration. The Cosmic Mother. The Cosmic Mother appears during psilocybin, ayahuasca, and DMT experiences as a nurturing, universal feminine presence. She may be composed of stars, vines, or cosmic energy. This entity represents the archetypal Great Mother, the feminine principle that creates and nurtures all life. Encounters with the Cosmic Mother often involve feelings of being welcomed home to the source of all existence. Serpent beings. Ayahuasca experiences frequently feature serpent beings, sacred snakes that move in rhythm with the trip and often serve as teachers or guides. These entities feel ancient and wise, connected to deep ecological and spiritual knowledge. Serpents appear in mythologies worldwide as symbols of wisdom, transformation, and the life force itself. Their presence in ayahuasca visions connects users to humanity's oldest spiritual traditions. The Old Woman. In our deepest tier, we encounter entities that transcend individual psychology to touch something fundamental about human experience. The Old Woman, also known as the Hag, appears across cultures in sleep paralysis episodes. She may sit on the victim's chest, stand near the bed, or press down with crushing weight. This entity appears in folklore worldwide: the Pinyin in China, the Cedar in Cambodia, the Karabasan in Turkey. The Old Woman represents humanity's primal fear of death and the unknown. She embodies the dark feminine, not the nurturing mother, but the crone who reminds us of mortality. Architects. Architects appear during LSD, ketamine, and DMT experiences as beings responsible for designing and maintaining the structure of reality itself. They appear godlike or hyper-intelligent. These entities work with impossible architecture and geometric forms that seem to underlie physical reality. They represent the mind's attempt to understand the fundamental principles that govern existence. The Watchers. The Watchers appear across multiple conditions as beings that silently observe from above or the periphery. They neither help nor harm, but simply watch with unsettling intensity. The Watchers represent the paranoid fear of being observed and judged. They embody the anxiety that we're never truly alone, that something is always watching and evaluating our actions. The Curtain People. Our final entities are the Curtain People, shadowy figures that hide behind curtains or in corners during DPH and Datura experiences. They whisper, move when not observed, then disappear when confronted. The Curtain People represent the ultimate peripheral threat, entities that exist only at the edge of perception, suggesting danger that can never be fully confirmed or denied.